Okay. Okay. We have Yud Hey.
Yep.
Bulgaris who waited 12 months or a widow 30 days, Reb Eliezer says, since her husband is responsible for her sustenance, he can revoke her Nedarim. This is common to say, however, a husband cannot revoke her Nedarim until she has entered his authority. A woman waiting a Yavam, whether one Yavam or two Yavamim, Reb Eliezer says he may revoke her Nedarim. Reb Yeshua says when she awaits one but not two. Reb Akiva says neither, when she awaits one nor two. Reb Eliezer says if he can revoke the Nedarim of a wife whom he acquired on his own, surely he can revoke the Nedarim of a wife acquired for him by heaven. Said Rabbi Akiva to him, no, if you said this for a woman he acquired on his own, it is because others have no rights to her. Shall you say this for a woman acquired for him by heaven, to whom others do have rights? Rabbi Yeshua said to him, Akiva, your words apply when there are two Yavavim. What do you answer when there is one Yavam? He said to him, the Yavama is not as complete a wife to the Yavam as a betrothed woman is the complete wife to her husband. One who says to his wife, all the Nedarim which you shall make from now until I return from such and such a place are confirmed. He said nothing. But if he says they shall be revoked, Rabbi Eliezer says they are revoked. The Kukumen, however, say they are not revoked. Rabbi Eliezer says if he can revoke Nedarim which are already binding, should he not be able to revoke Nedarim which are not yet binding? They said to him, it says, the pasuk says, her husband can confirm it and her husband can revoke it. That which can be confirmed can be revoked, and that which cannot be confirmed cannot be revoked. Okay.
Okay, good. All right, so now we're ready for Ches Haparas Nedarim Kol Hayom. So the time period is for Haparas Nedarim is the entire day. V'yesh b'davar lahakil lahachmir, and it can be stringent, it could be lenient. Ketzad haso nadra b'leile Shabbos. So if she makes her neder as Shabbos is coming, it's already gotten it's like just before Kiddush or whatever. Nadra b'leile Shabbos, Yafer b'leile Shabbos, uva yom haShabbos ad shetechshach. Then he's got the entire night plus the following day. He's got 24 hours then to decide whether he wants to be mefer or not. Nadra im chashecha, however, if she took the neder just before sunset, mefer ad shetechshach, then he's got only until nightfall. Because if it already gets to nightfall, and he hasn't done the hafara, that's it. He can't ever do it again. Okay.
So she makes that vow. If she makes that vow right before, we're not sure that in between period when we're not sure exactly when it.
Right. So that's an interesting question. Is like what would happen if it's in the Banish Mashas? So let's take a look at this from a couple of perspectives. Let's say she makes the neder while it's Vadai day, and then the sun sets and we're in Banish Mashas, and he decides now that he wants to do hafara. So let's say we're dealing with a period where it's Safek day, Safek night, and we're not sure yet if he managed to be mefer the neder. What would you paskin is the halacha in that case?
Wow.
First thing you ask, are we dealing with the din d'oraisa or din d'rabbanan?
So it's the Raisa?
D'oraisa. It's a din d'oraisa. A woman's neder, anyone's neder is a din d'oraisa. Right?
That's right.
That is answer to them with the force of a d'oraisa. So now we've got a suffix whether that neder has been cancelled or not.
I would think
suffix d'oraisa lechumra. We say suffix d'oraisa lechumra. She has to assume that the neder is still binding.
Okay. Can I do anything after dark?
Right. Now what happens if she made the neder during the period of suffix?
Right.
Okay, and he came 1 minute later and made and did hafara. So also Banish Mashas. So now, do you say that if the two ways of looking at this, it's actually an interesting little subtlety. Do you look at it that Banish Mashas is a safek period, and we'll say so if If it's daytime, then he also did the hafara by daytime, and if it's nighttime, then he also did the hafara by nighttime. And either way, he managed to do a good hafara.
Right.
That's one way you could look at it and say Mima'an Afshach, it's good. If, however, you could look at it a different way. So we say we know that the day changes somewhere between Shkia and Tzeis.
Right. Right.
And it's possible that the day changed in between when she said it and when he said it. In which case, again, we've got that suffix that comes back on a din doraisa. And I think
Right,
the latter way is the correct way to look at it. I don't think it's I don't think you look at I don't think you look at Bein Hashmashos as a full entity between that either it's all day or it's all night. I think it's just that we know that somewhere between Shkia and Tzeis is the official end of the day. We're just not sure when, and therefore Bein Hashmashos is all considered as a suffix. But it's not the same suffix. The later you go, the more likely it is. It's a continuum of how much of a suffix we are. Okay. Anyways, that's the time period for Hafaras Nedarim. Perek Yud Aleph. Elu Nedarim Shehu Mefer. So now the husband doesn't have carte blanche to be mefer any of his wife's vows. He can only do Devarim Sheyesh Bahem Inoi Nefesh, things that are personal suffering on the part of the wife.
Right.
If she's going to bath or not bath. If she's going to wear jewelry or not wear jewelry. Amar Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi comes and says, I disagree with you. That these are not even called Inoi Nefesh. And the husband would not have any right to do hafara on them because she told Bein Atzmon Bein Achim. Right. So these okay. So now this is when it's something. Okay, so there's a whole big preface to this Mishnah here in the Kahati. Right, so the Baal can be mefer things that are between him and her. Okay, and even if it's not between okay, even if it's not any kind of suffering, but if it's something that is going to interfere in their relationship, then he's got the power to nullify them. We need to about so the difference. And then there's difference that are things that are herself that nefesh.
Right.
The difference between Haparas and Nidrei Inoi Nefesh. So there's a difference between things that are for her own personal suffering and Haparas Nedarim that are between him and her. That in Nidrei Inoi Nefesh, the Baal can be mefer, whether it's for himself or for others. That is that the Nedarim are completely eliminated. And even if he divorces her and she marries somebody else, that neder doesn't come into play at all. But when it's neder that's between him and her, for himself he can be mefer, but for other people he cannot. And if she gets divorced and marries somebody else, then the original nullification of her vow does not help her regarding the second husband.
So if she says, if I bathe or if I do not bathe, that's not considered a matter of self-denial, really.
That's what the Tanna Kama says it is. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. He says that it's not considered self-denial.
Unless it be something between husband and wife.
Right. So he considers it something that's between husband and wife. Correct. That this is something that's between husband and wife. So he could he could nullify it regarding himself, but not regarding others. If Elohim nidrei inoi nefesh. So what is considered inoi nefesh? Amra konam peiros ha'olam alai. She asses all of the produce of the world on herself. But the husband can say, Mufar, that's inoy nefesh. You're preventing yourself from eating anything that's and he can totally remove it. Peiros Medina alai. But if she says only fruit that comes from Russia is asked to me. Yavila, I mean Medina affairs, but he can bring a peiros from another place. So now she just gets political and says she doesn't like, she doesn't want to get anything from Russia because she doesn't like what they're doing in Ukraine. Then okay, so you can get a peiros from somewhere else. Peiros chen vanize alai. If she says I won't buy from this chen vani because he's I don't like him. Eno yachal lahafer. He cannot do hafara on that because he could go and buy her food from somewhere else. However, if the Baal has an account with the storekeeper and he's the only one who's extending in credit, and it's not easy for him to go and buy from anywhere else. Now he can do hafara, divrei Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi says that even though he okay, but the Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Yossi and say that even somebody says Hanas Ploni Alai, even though she is mutar to other people, Hareza Bichlal Nidre Inoy Nefesh. And so Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi said that this is in the previous Mishnah that this is not called. You can see he's a little bit tighter on his definition of what's called Inoy Nefesh. But the Chachamim say that that even taking a neder of hana from somebody else is called a neder Inoy Nefesh. And the Gemara explains that this divrei Rabbi Yossi is coming to tell us that all of the following Mishnayos, bear this in mind as we're going forward, are according to Stam Rabbi Yossi. Okay, and the halacha is not going to follow Rabbi Yossi in all of these cases over here. But so bear in mind that from tomorrow and onwards, these Stam Mishnayos that are being taught without any Tana's name on them, that's Rabbi Yossi, and the halacha is not going to be like him.
Okay. All right.
Now, there's just an interesting little point over here. We learned about Hataras Nedarim, that if somebody finds a petach for a neder, then even if it's like, remember we said if he takes a neder from meat and they say, well, did you realize that you wouldn't be able to enjoy your Shabbos so much? So yeah, I didn't realize. Okay, fine. So then it's hutar for Shabbos. Not only is it hutar for Shabbos, it's hutar completely. There's no partial Hataras Nedarim. But it seems that there is a partial Hafaras Nedarim. Because the Baal can do Hafara as far as he's concerned, but he can't do Hafara for Beino Lebein Ishto, right? He can do Hafara for herself and him, but he can't do it for other people.
Right, I got that. Okay. All right. Do you have time, Shaw?
What's the time? Yeah, we can go.
Okay. We have hey Aleph. Konam, why with respect to my tasting, it today is forbidden to him only until dark. This week it is forbidden to him only through the week, and the Sabbath is included in the week. Preceding it this month, it is forbidden to him throughout the month, and Rosh Chodesh is included in the coming month. This year it is forbidden to him throughout the year, and Rosh Hashanah is included in the year to come. This sabbatical cycle, it is forbidden throughout the sabbatical cycle, and the sabbatical year is included in the cycle preceding it. But if he said 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, and 1 sabbatical cycle, it is forbidden to him from that day until the next day. Until Pesach, it is forbidden until Pesach arrives. Until it is Pesach, it is forbidden until Pesach ends. Until before Pesach, Reb Meir says it is forbidden until Pesach arrives, and Reb Yossi said it is forbidden until Pesach ends. So the first part of this issue is the same as the last part.
No, it's
because he said
there's other Pesach.
Yossi seems to be the same thing. He said until Pesach arrives.
And if you look at the Hebrew, there's Ada Pesach and Ad Lifnei Pesach.
Okay, all right, okay. Until the harvest, until the vintage, until the olive picking, it is forbidden only until these times arrive. This is the rule. Whatever has a set time, and he said until it arrives, it's forbidden until it arrives. If he said until it is forbidden until it ends. Whatever has no set time, whether he said until it is or whether he said until it arrives, it is forbidden only until it arrives. Okay. Okay, Kesubos. Okay. Chet. He shall not say to her, your ketubah is lying on the table. Rather, all his property is surety for the ketubah. Likewise, a man shall not say to his wife, your ketubah is lying on the table. And rather, all his property is surety for her ketubah. And if he divorced her, she is entitled only to her ketubah. If he married her, she is like all other women. She is entitled only to her ketubah. If one writes to his wife, I have neither right nor claim to your property, he may nevertheless enjoy the usra during her lifetime. If she dies, he inherits her. If so, why did he write to her, I have neither right nor claim to your property, that if she is old or gave it away, the act is valid. If he wrote to her, I have neither right nor claim to your property or usra, he does not enjoy the usra during her lifetime, but if she dies, he inherits her. Rabbi Yehuda says he may always enjoy the usra of the produce unless he writes to her, I have neither right nor claim to your property or its produce or the usra of its produce forever. If he wrote to her, I have neither right nor claim to your property or its produce by the usra of its produce during your lifetime and after your death, he does not enjoy the usra during her lifetime, but if she dies, he does not inherit her. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, if she dies, he inherits her because it is stipulated on what is written in the Torah. And whoever stipulates on what is written in the Torah, the stipulation is void. One more. If someone's died and left a wife, a creditor, and heirs, and he had a deposit or a loan in the possession of others, Reb Tarfon says they shall be given to the weakest among them. Reb Akiva says no, clemency is shown in the judgment. Rather, it is given to the heirs, for they all require an oath, whereas the heirs do not require an oath.
Okay. Next.
Tanis. Megillah. If one read it discontinuously, or while half asleep, he has fulfilled his obligation. If one was writing it, expounding upon it, or correcting it, provided he had intent, he fulfilled his obligation. If not, he did not fulfill his obligation. If one was written with ointment, vermilion, gum, or ferrous sulfate, or on paper or on unfinished parchment, he did not fulfill his obligation unless it is written in Assyrian script on parchment and with ink. A townsman who went to a walled city or a city dweller who went to a town, if he intends to return to his home, he reads it at the same time as in his home, but if not, he reads with them. From what part of Megillah must one read in order to fulfill his obligations? Reb Meir says all of it. The Yehuda says from there was a Jewish man. The Yossi says from after these things. All are qualified to read the Megillah except one who is deaf, an imbecile, or a minor. Rabbi Yehuda declares a minor qualifies. We may not read the Megillah or circumcise nor perform a ritual immersion nor sprinkle purification water. Similarly, a woman who counts a day corresponding to a day may not immerse herself, and the sun has risen until the sun has risen. However, if any of them did so after the first ray of dawn appeared, the act is valid. Okay. Allah. 5/4 of flour are liable to challah. The leaven, fine bran, and coarse bran are 4/5. They are liable. If the coarse bran was removed from them and returned to them, they are exempt. The measure of challah is 1/24. If one makes dough for himself or for his son's banquet, 1/24. A baker who makes makes it for a sale in the market, so too. A woman who makes it for sale in the market, 1/48. If her dough is rendered unclean, whether by error or by circumstances, beyond the control, 1/48. If it was redeemed unclean deliberately, 1/24, so that the sinner shall not be rewarded. Rabbi Eliezer says it may be taken from the clean for the unclean. How? Clean dough and unclean dough. He takes the measure of challah from the dough from which no challah has been taken and puts less than an egg's bulk in the middle, in order that he take from that which is nearby, but the concomitant forbid. One may eat a chance meal from the dough until it is rolled with wheat. That's it, right? That was it. Okay. The guy. Zion. If on a coat that has colored and white parts, the white parts expand from one to another. Reb Eliezer was asked, what if there was only one white section? He said to them, I was not taught. Reb Yehuda ben Sura said to him, I can expound on the subject. He said to him, it is to uphold the words of the common. You may. He said to him, perhaps it will remain the same for 2 weeks, and clothing that remains the same for 2 weeks is tameh. He said to him, you are a great scholar if you have held the words of the sages. Continuous expansion may be of any size, and distant expansion must be of the size of a gris, and returning expansion must be the size of a gris. The warp, the weft are immediately susceptible to the gayim, and Rebbe Yehuda says the warp is susceptible only from the time it is boiled, the weft immediately, and spun thread of linen from when they are bleached. How much yarn must be on the spool to be susceptible to the gayim? Enough to weave from it 3 by 3 finger widths, warp and weft, even if it is all warp thread and all weft thread. If the thread is disconnected, it does not become tameh with the gayim, and Rebbe Yehuda says even if it is split only once and he tied it, it does not become tameh. When thread is rolled from one skein to another, from one spool to another, or from the upper beam to the lower beam, or when 2 sides of a shirt that are attached by a single thread and a neger appears on one side, the second side is tahor. If a neger appears on the weft thread when it is inside the shed, literally in the sole of the loom or the warp ready for weaving, they become tameh with the gayim immediately. Rabbi Shimon says only if the warp was close together does it become tameh. Okay, test vav. There are 4 types of people who sit before sages: a sponge, a funnel, a strainer, and a sieve. A sponge. No, that's wrong. A strainer and a sieve. A sponge which soaks up everything. A funnel which takes up in one end and passes through it to the other end. A strainer which removes the wine but collects the dregs, and a sieve which removes the flour dust but collects the fine flour. Any love that depends on a particular thing, when that thing ceases, the love will cease. When a love does not depend on any particular thing, it will never cease. Any dispute that is for the sake of heaven will endure, but one that is not for the sake of heaven will not.
I think you skipped the examples of what are these different loves.
You're right. One of the example of love that depends on a particular thing, the love of Ammon and Tamar. And what is an example of love that does not depend on a particular thing, the love of David and Jonathan. Any dispute that is for the sake of heaven will endure, but one that is not for the sake of heaven will not endure. What is an example of dispute that is for the sake of heaven? The dispute between Hillel and Shammai. And what is the example of dispute that is not for the sake of heaven? The dispute of Chorak and his entire company.
Okay, so in between the Parshas Korach in Eretz Yisrael and Parshas Korach in Chutz La'aretz, we got to read about the Mishna about that's Korach.
Right. Okay. We have tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh. So